Joel, who's the better coach, Saban or Meyer?
I hate this question. I mean, both of these guys are great coaches. Not just like, oh, they're good for their era. No. Urban Meyer and Nick Saban both are great football coaches across the board of eras.
Which one is the Mount Rushmore coach right now?
If I had to pick one, I would have to go with Nick Saban. And here's the reason. I believe that coaching comes down to three categories, in particular in the college game, and this is not an NFL model. Scheme, motivation, and recruiting. I don't know if there is a better scheme-oriented coach in college football than Nick Saban. There's certainly not a better recruiter than Nick Saban. Urban Meyer would hold the checkmark in motivation, but you're talking about a guy in Saban that has won national championships across cycles of players. Not even Pete Carroll, guys, won a national championship. As great as he was at USC, he never won a national championship without that one core of great players, Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, that one core of great defensive players. We've seen Nick Saban go across recruiting cycles 2-3 times and win national championships. So I don't think he gets the credit he deserves as being not only a great recruiter, but also a great motivator of players and young men. We've seen what he does schematically, and we've seen him adjust over the years. Remember, this was a guy that was just going to hand it off 35 times and go win with his defense. He brings in Lane Kiffin. They open it up. So guess what they can do now, Skip? Win the shootout when Chad Kelly has a hot game. They can do that. They can win the slugfest. He has adjusted beautifully during the course of his career, and nothing against Urban Meyer. But Nick Saban, with a national championship this year, if he were to win it, is, in my book, the greatest college football coach in the history of the game.
Really? Interesting.
Let the church say amen.
I'm going to preach to my own choir now because I think nobody else on this table is going to listen to me.
I'll listen.
Yeah. Urban Meyer is a better all-around football coach than Nick Saban. I think you are slightly overrating Nick Saban, and I have respect for him, and you are way overrating Nick Saban.
Nope.
And I'll tell you why. Obviously, Urban has won at various places because he started off with an undefeated year coaching Utah to the Fiesta Bowl win with Alex Smith at quarterback, obviously. And then he goes to Florida and wins 2 national championships, and now at Ohio State, he's won 1. Could win another this year, but he went 12-0 that first year when they couldn't go to a bowl. So he's been nothing but great at Ohio State. Since he arrived at Ohio State, he has the best record in college football ahead of Nick Saban. Now let's look at Nick Saban. Does Nick call his own offensive plays? Urban runs his own offense and calls every play from the sideline. Nick Saban needed Lane Kiffin to come in and save his offense. And now he's going to need Sarkisian to be what Lane Kiffin was, where he just hands him the ball and says, you do it with the young quarterbacks. You turn Blake Sims around, and he is going to miss Lane Kiffin, who's been extraordinarily good as an offensive coordinator. I'm not saying Lane's going to be a great head coach. I think he might be the classic boy wonder offensive coordinator, but Nick is going to miss him because he needed him. Now let's look at Nick's specialty, which too often to me has been his frailty, and that is he is a defensive football coach. I'm just going to do the games since Urban arrived at Ohio State in Nick's tenure at Alabama, in which they have allowed 40-plus points. This is shocking to me. It's his specialty, right? He's the defensive guru. So they gave up 45 to my Oklahoma Sooners and Trevor Knight in the Sugar Bowl, 44 to Auburn one year with Nick Marshall at quarterback, who's now a special teams player for the Jets, 43 to Ole Miss, as we talked about, in Tuscaloosa, and then 43 this year to Ole Miss in Oxford, 42 to Johnny Manziel, 42 to Urban Meyer, when, of course, Ezekiel Elliott ran wild for 230 yards, national semifinal game. And then, of course, 40 last year to Clemson when Deshaun threw for 405 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's not great defense. That's not a guru. There are too many collapses by that side of the ball. I'm sorry. Urban runs one side of the ball beautifully, and there's nobody better than Urban Meyer at calling plays and teaching offense. So how can you say, again, if you want to do recruiting versus recruiting, it's pretty close. He's got a pipeline going to Alabama right now, and I think Nick is a great CEO, but Urban's right there with him. And as you say, it's very close. But because Urban calls his own plays and Nick's defense collapses too much, I'm going to give the edge to Urban Meyer.
Joe, this is not even close. Since Nick Saban has arrived in Alabama, there are 118 in 18. Skip likes to mention those 40-point games. There have been 8 of them.
Just 8.
So basically 1 every 17 games. Skip also didn't mention they're 4-4 in those in those games. Since he's been there, his team has been number 1 at least once in the polls. We're talking about a guy that's won 4 national titles in 7 seasons. Now, he talks about how Urban Meyer calls such great plays. But in the last 2 games that they've played, he's held that Florida team to 19 total points.
That's right.
He did do that. And you remember the last time you saw Tim Tebow? What was Tim Tebow doing in the national championship game, Skip? Okay. We don't even want to go there. See, how much?
Which one are you talking about?
In the SEC championship game.
The national championship game, I saw him run my Oklahoma Sooners off the field after he gave the greatest halftime speech I've ever seen. We're going to go out there, we're going to run this ball right down their throats. Okay. And they did.
Okay, but how about this?
My Sooners were favored in the game, and he ran them off the field.
The
fourth quarter. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
How much credit are you going to give Tom Herman and Dan Mullen for calling plays on the Urban Meyer?
Urban Meyer calls these plays.
No, he does not. Tom Herman called those plays.
That's where you're a little off base. Urban is not as involved with the X's and O's as people think. He's very hands-off with the X's and O's. He's a motivator. He's a player's coach, and he does a great job. This is not a knock.
The offense. It's all his game plan. He's the one calling the key play.
What happened to Florida offensively when Dan Mullen left?
When Dan Mullen left offensively, I don't know who's the quarterback at that point. They didn't have a quarterback, right? Was that the
isn't that his
era?
job?
Isn't that his job? He's so good. Hold on.
Tom Herman has left, and
when
they
has
scored
Alabama had a
17
quarterback?
points against Michigan State?
Really?
I
Lane
think
Kiffin had to turn around Blake Sims. What was he, like a receiver?
Saban overcomes the losses of assistant coaches much better than Urban Meyer, and we haven't seen Urban win at one spot with cycles of recruits. Remember, he left.
Wait a second.
He left Utah and then left Florida. Remember, he took a nice little downturn at Florida, and I don't like sitting here and having to take shots at Urban Meyer, but
he's
the
been
reality
through a cycle
is
here at Ohio State, and he's gone 12 wins, 14, 12, and 11. That's pretty great.
And we'll see if he can win the national championship. Remember, he didn't even win his own division, nor did he win the Big Ten Conference this year.
Hold on. How you even get in the playoffs and you can't? How can you be one of the 4 best teams in the country and you're not one of the 4 best? You're not one of the best teams in your conference. You're not the best team in your conference.
Yeah, but he's doing it with a quarterback that we all agree can't throw. Right?
Hold on. But
that's pretty great.
That's his job to recruit.
But you told me that Urban, he calls these great plays. When they lost to Michigan State, how many points did they score last year? With Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield, how many points did they score, Skip?
At home.
At home.
Yeah.
They lost.
Okay.
You know what happened to Alabama? You know what Alabama did to that team?
You know how many Nick Saban's defense gave up to Trevor Knight? 45 points. Are you kidding me? Okay, you give me like 2 bad games. I just gave you 10. 10. What do you?
You gave me 8 games of 40 out of 136 games played.
He gave up 34 in the kick 6 game, which is pretty awful at home.
But they won 4 of those games, Skip, out of the 8. So once every 17 games.
Because of Lane Kiffin, they won those games.
Oh, really? Lane Kiffin plays defense. No. Since he's arrived,
I hope he doesn't play defense if you're giving up 45.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Name a stat defensively since Nick Saban has been in Alabama that they're not number 1 in.
Well, I told you the SEC was really weak this year.
They were really weak. Now,
Mike Vanderbilt Commodores won 3 games and went to a bowl game in the SEC.
I would ask you, what defensive-oriented coach has maintained a level of success through this new era of college football when they went to, and I think it was 07, the 40-second play clock, and you've got this 3-yard buffer for illegal man downfield and the run-pass option plays and the spread offenses and the tempo offenses. Guess what all these defensive-oriented head coaches had to do just to stay in the game? Gary Patterson at TCU, he had to go and start running the spread. Bob Stoops at Oklahoma, he had to go and start running the spread. They don't stop anybody there. Saban is this rare breed that has maintained a level of dominance on defense, only 8 times given up 40 points in 130-plus games.
136.
I'm telling you, this guy is on a different level. If he wins this year, if he one more national championship, regardless of if it's this year or not, Nick Saban is going to go down as the greatest college football coach ever.
If you'll just
ever.
give Jim Harbaugh time at Michigan.
Khaki pants ain't gonna do nothing.
Yes, he is, because they led the nation in defense all the way up to the Ohio State game. They are beating the system, and he's an offensive coach.
Did he
who
ever
knows
win the
how to coach
Pac-12?
defense. Well, he was at Stanford. Are you kidding me?
David Shaw's won the Pac-12 at Stanford
Oh!
3 times.
You know what? But when he broke through, he really broke through. The last year, he was really good. He had Andrew Luck.
I agree.
right?
And again, you're not going to make a living taking shots at Urban Meyer or taking shots at Jim Harbaugh. But the fact remains, Harbaugh never won a national championship or a conference championship at Stanford. He didn't win the Super Bowl.
He was really
Neither
good.
did Nick Saban.
But wait a second.
He
He
hasn't,
got to a
he hasn't
Super Bowl. He
even
got
won
to
the Big
3
Ten.
straight championship games.
He hasn't even won the Big
What
Ten.
happened? Do you,
Again, you're
better
not gonna
coach,
make a
better
living
coach,
taking
Jim
shots.
Harbaugh or Nick Saban?
Nick
Better
Saban.
coach.
Saban.
Nick
It's
Saban.
not even close. It's Jim
not-
Harbaugh.
you're right.
What happened to Nick Saban when he went to Miami in pro football? Help us out, Joy.
Listen, I get
Help
it.
us out.
I get it.
Bring up this terrible memory.
This man is going after his 6th national championship, 2
Sex.
different schools.
Sex.
I mean,
Hey, Jim Harbaugh won big in pro football.
Khaki
And again,
pants.
Khaki pants.
What
at
do you
a
have against
quarterback.
khaki pants?
Yeah.
Jim
Hey,
Harbaugh is a great coach. Urban Meyer
Hey,
is a
probably
great
wearing
coach.
Dickies.
Hey.
Nick Saban is a legend.
Colin Kaepernick threw a pass to Crabtree in the end zone, and he was interfered with. You know it, and I know it. And that should have ended that Super Bowl in favor of khaki
right,
pants.
well,
I know
leave
it
it
just
there.
like Dez caught that ball.
Yeah,
Yeah,
He did
Dez
catch
got that ball.
It was
and
a catch.
If,
It was a
if
catch.
Asante Samuel catches one of the 2 interceptions, the Patriots
You know
are
what? That's a
undefeated.
good point.
And David
That's a
Tyree.
great
I mean,
point. Thank you.
So what's
If
the,
Wes
Thank you
Welker
for
holds
making
on to
that.
that ball,
Yeah. If Eli doesn't close his eyes and
Yep.
throw it as far as he
Exactly.
could.
Ifs
Joel,
and buts.
thanks for
Tyree's
joining
face.
us.
Ifs and
Enjoy the
buts. You
games
bet.
this
Thank you,
weekend.
Joy.